Welcome back to this week's podcast and the series that we are delving back into of Why I Am Not. And this week, I want to discuss why I am not a Muslim. And when discussing all these subjects, my heart is not to give out a bunch of information to argue about and to all these different things. The thing that I want to point out is truth is not relative. Truth is not your truth and my truth, and that there's no absolute truth at all. There is one truth, and I think that eternity is a thing that we should all discuss, we should all think about, because it's the once you die, that's it. And there's no changing your destination, there's no changing anything. And so I think getting down to what the truth is the number one most important thing that we could ever talk about. And so that's why I'm doing this study of, okay, what is truth? And going through the evidence and talking about these things and discuss things. And today I want to talk about why I am not a Muslim. And when you look at the Islamic faith, Islam is the second largest religion in the world next to Christianity. I believe it's like 1.6, 1.7 billion people are in Islam, are Muslims. And Islam came around 500 years after Christ. And something, when thinking about this topic of 500 years after Christ, Muhammad seems to have all these details about Christ whenever he came 500 years after, which I'm wondering how he had all these details about Christ after the fact when he was nowhere near it. For instance, they say, or Muhammad says in the Quran and all these different things and their beliefs, that Jesus Christ never died on a cross. Well, historical facts, when you look back at all those, it is historically proven without any doubt, it's indisputable that Jesus Christ died on a cross. Now, it's disputed whether or not he rose, but the historical records that he died on a cross are indisputable. But Muhammad, coming 500 years after that, says that Jesus Christ never died on a cross. Well, out of the gate, that's kind of crazy to me. Something that I've kind of discovered when, looking into Muhammad, looking into the Quran, these different things, Muhammad seems to change things whenever it's convenient for him. And whenever, he wants to, there would be something written by Allah in the Quran, and it was supposed to apply to all people. But if it's something that he didn't want to apply to, all of a sudden out of nowhere, he got a new revelation that said he didn't have to follow that rule, but everybody else had to follow it. Something interesting about Muhammad, and I want to kind of delve in and talk about Muhammad starting, kind of at first, but something interesting about Muhammad in the Quran, chapter number 33, verse 53, God gives this vision. There was all these people coming to Muhammad's house. They would have dinner. They would spend time with Muhammad, but they got into a place where they would start asking Muhammad a bunch of questions about God and how all of this stuff has happened. Well, out of nowhere, Muhammad gets this revelation from God that, hey, okay, I know you come over to dinner and I know you come hang out, but from now on, after dinner, you're no longer allowed. God doesn't want you to stay afterwards to ask me questions about God. He wants you to leave as soon as we get done eating. Because it said Muhammad was shy and he just didn't want to answer these questions. Well, I kind of find that interesting that if God has showed you all these revelations and you've seen all these things, how you're not able to answer these questions and that he wouldn't take time to reveal these. But conveniently, there was a revelation that said that, God doesn't want me to stay and answer all these questions. You need to leave. So I just find that interesting. But considering the Islamic faith, they talk about it being one of the fastest growing religions in the world, but it's not why you think. The reason why people think that, and they make it out why it's the fastest religion, well, it's because of all these conversions and all these different things. Well, that's not true at all. The reason why the Islamic faith is growing so fast is because they have the fastest birth rates that there is. At the average age, of a 25-year-old here in American, just in our culture, by the time a woman is 25 years old and married, she's had like one child. Well, in the Muslim faith, by the time a woman is 25 years old, she's had 5 to 7 kids already. And so because that's what they predominantly do. They don't have careers and all these different things that they go after. The majority of them just are mothers and they have kids. And so it's 5 to 7 kids. They said that in Niger, which is the highest birth rate, it's predominantly Islam, and per woman, there's about 7 kids in Islam. So over this course of years and years, they are overcoming every other religion, not because of conversions and not because people are being reached and their lives are changed, just because they've had children and they teach them all these fakes. And when you've grown up believing a certain thing, well, obviously you're not going to question it because that's the only thing you've ever been taught. You've not been taught to, oh, well, look at this and look at that. Well, it's like, no, this is the only way. And you're taught that, and you're having all these kids, and now it's overcoming and overflowing throughout all the world. So that's the reason why that it has grown so much. But how Islam got started, just kind of discussing Muhammad. Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca around 570 AD. He ended up dying around 630 AD. But Muhammad, right after he was born, his mother died. And so he goes to move in with his grandmother. And at the age of 8 years old, his grandmother dies. So he's had all this kind of crazy loss at the beginning of his life, but he ends up moving back to Mecca with his uncle. And at age of 25 years old, he marries a 40-year-old widow. And he ends up having about 6 kids, of 2 of which boys who died in infancy. But he then marries, after this 40-year-old woman, she grows older and she passes away. He then marries a widow of a disciple, and he marries a 6-year-old girl, who then moves in with him at the age of 9 years old to consummate this marriage. His 7th wife was his ex-daughter-in-law, and by the time he had died, he had up to 12 wives and 2 concubines. Even though in Surah chapter 4, verse 3, it says that you're only supposed to have a limited number of 4 wives. By the time he had passed away, he had 12 wives and 2 concubines. Some believe he had way more than that. But I find it interesting that whenever, we had discussed this before, whenever Muhammad didn't want to go along with something Allah had already written in the Quran, he conveniently got another revelation that said he didn't have to abide by those rules, and so then he wouldn't abide by them. Also in Surah chapter 4, verse 31, marriage to one's daughter-in-law was prohibited. But conveniently in Surah chapter 33, verses 36 through 40, Muhammad was giving a new revelation from God for his adopted son Zayd. So he gets this revelation, and he says to his adopted son Zayd, okay, God said that you're supposed to divorce your wife so that I can marry her. That's kind of convenient that even though in the Quran and all these, from Allah before, you're not supposed to do this. Well, conveniently, he has a revelation that, no, that's not right for me. I can do these things. So he goes against that. Well, moving on forward, Muhammad starts having all these visions. And not like a prophet in the Bible or a prophet before where God just speaks to you and says, here's the vision. Muhammad had all these weird visions, and it got to a point where Muhammad's foster mother thought that he was demon possessed because, the way he would have these visions, like one account, he ends up, or he talks about how these 2 men attack Muhammad and they cut his stomach open. And when he was seen after this opposing, event had happened, he was not injured. He was standing there fine. Nothing had happened. And what he ends up saying later, he later claims that these attackers were angels and that they were cleansing his heart. Well, we know that, all the prophets before, nothing ever happened like this to show visions or to do any of these things. But this is just kind of a weird account where his foster mothers thought that, oh, he must be demon possessed because all these stuff were happening. And something else interesting to think about, when he started getting all these visions and these different things, he went to his family and said, hey, I think this is the devil. I think these are some bad spirits, evil spirits that are giving me some of these things. And his family said, no, it's not him. It's from God. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, he continues to get these revelations. And in 610 AD, he claimed to receive his first series of revelations of the Quran from God through Gabriel the angel. And as we know in the book of Galatians, God said, if you're going to receive, and Paul said, if you're going to receive another gospel, let that angel be accursed. Because God has already given the gospel that's supposed to apply to all men. And if someone else besides that comes and says, hey, no, this is another way, then let that person be accursed. And something that I want to point out is, if I was the devil, there's nothing I would want more than to trade the amazing truth that Jesus Christ died for everyone, and he was buried, he rose again the 3rd day, and now everybody, anywhere, you don't have to work to get to heaven. All you have to do is accept Jesus Christ. if there was a deal that good that keeps people and allows people to be with God for all of eternity, if I was the devil, I would want to mess that up. And what other way to mess it up than the devil doesn't have to say there's no God. Oh, I wish there was more atheists. No, the devil doesn't have to do that. If he can change a truth so simple, the simplicity that is found in Christ, if he can change that and just diverge it, if you can move it, if you're in a plane and you slightly turn the control, just a minor difference, by the time you've gotten all the way down to a destination, you've turned, just even if it's just a small inch of a turn, you wind up way away from your destination where it was supposed to be. And the devil doesn't have to get you to say, oh, you become an atheist, God doesn't exist. If the devil can just change some minor things the way that you believe, there could be some things that we agree on, but if you can change just what happened with Jesus and that Jesus isn't the only way, then that's his end goal. And that's what I would do. I would send angels that say, I'm from God, and this is the right way to follow. And that's what ended up happening. And he received these revelations, which established the Quran. So after this fact, Muhammad was then warned by Gabriel, because of all these things that are happened, that people were going to try to assassinate him. Gabriel shared this with him. And so Muhammad ends up leaving with his wife and a disciple of his. And they end up leaving, and they end up with an army of around 3,000 people going up against, over time, he had developed this army. And they end up fighting against this army of 10,000 people, and they end up winning these wars against the Jews. And it says that they end up conquering Mecca, which is kind of crazy. But the problem with this is that there is no historical proof for this at all. That's the funny thing about it. If Muhammad is going around winning all of these wars, he's accomplishing all these great battles, and all these people are dying, well, people out there have never even heard of the guy. So what's interesting is we have more evidence and more historical records for a Jewish carpenter than we do a warlord who has apparently accomplished all of these battles that there's hardly any historical records for. There's a best-selling author, Robert Spencer, who ends up writing an entire book entitled "Did Muhammad Exist?" because he doesn't believe Muhammad did. Because the evidence for Muhammad is so wonky, and something I'm about to bring out in a minute. It's funny, even in the Quran, Muhammad is only mentioned 4 times, and Jesus is mentioned 78 times in the Quran, which is kind of an interesting point, if you will. But he writes a whole book about this because of the unstableness of the historical records concerning Muhammad. And so that's just something else interesting to think about, that if he had won all these wars and all these things, that there would be more historical records for it, that it's undoubtedly like, okay, Muhammad existed, this is what he did. But a lot of people are debating. I just watched a debate the other day where people debated if Muhammad even existed. Because, and I find that interesting that that's even a debate, that he did exist if he apparently accomplished all of these different wars and different things. Some more things about Muhammad. Muhammad owned and sold black slaves. Muhammad beat and said it was okay to beat your wife. In Surah 4, chapter 4, verse 34, it recalls a story of a man who slaps his wife. And so the wife and her father, they go to Muhammad and they tell him what happened. And Muhammad goes, there should be retaliation. Like, well, let's go back and handle this thing. Well, as they're all walking out, Muhammad apparently has this vision out of nowhere where Allah tells him, no, the husband's not in the wrong. It's okay for his husband to beat his wife or to slap his wife or for his husband to do what he did. Well, Muhammad turns to this wife and this father and says, I wanted one thing, but Allah wanted another. Allah said that this was okay. Well, that, and I know people of Islam, they make it as in, well, it wasn't like, women weren't being beat. It was just a gentle touch, and it just means something different. Well, we have records of a Muslim man beating his wife until her skin turned green. And Muhammad had no problem with this, and even said it probably happened because you were a bad wife. So we have a lot of just records of Muhammad. Some other different stuff. He was a very violent person. In Hadith, Volume 1, Volume 4, and Volume 8, there's records of him cutting off people's hands and feet. There's records of him burning people's eyes out, cutting off people's limbs, and leaving them to bleed out. There was records of him even making people to die of thirst. This is just kind of the stuff that Muhammad had done in these past records, just the kind of person that he was. Muhammad was supposed to be considered the best prophet. They talk about him being the best prophet. Well, in the Quran, Jesus is greater than Muhammad in the Quran. Like I made mention before, Muhammad is mentioned 4 times in the Quran, but Jesus is mentioned 78 times. In the Quran, Jesus is better than Muhammad. Jesus is sinless, chapter 19, verse 29. Muhammad was not. Quran chapter 40, verse 55, and Quran chapter 48, verses 1 and 2. Because you find that Muhammad, which a lot of people said, no, he was sinless. Well, we have records of him asking for forgiveness of sins. So he was not sinless. Jesus was sinless in the Quran. Jesus was raised alive, Quran 19, verse 29. Muhammad was not. And we're going to get into kind of his death here in a minute. Christ did miracles, Quran chapter 2, verse 253, in chapter 3, verse 49, but Muhammad did not. You find that interesting. If Muhammad was the main prophet, he was the main guy, how come he wouldn't be better than Jesus? How he couldn't do miracles, how he wouldn't raise from the dead, all these different things that Jesus was made mention doing. When Muhammad, when he was at his point to be able to pass away, he had went to this feast, this Jewish feast, and this woman poisoned him in his food. It gave it to him, and he was poisoned, which to me, as a prophet looking at this, you'd think that he would be able to see this ahead of time if someone was trying to kill him or poison him. But he did not see it. Someone that was with him passed away. And after Muhammad died, he was supposed to ascend up to heaven after 3 days, but he didn't. There was 12 days passed after he was poisoned, and he's sitting there laying, and the smell got so bad that they ended up just burying him instead of him raising up from the dead. So we see here that Jesus was better than Muhammad. And there's so much details that I could give and go into about Jesus and the deity of Christ and all these different things. But for time's sake, I can't today. But something that I want to move on to now is the Quran versus the Bible. Now, the people of a Muslim faith, Islamic faith today, believe that the Bible has been corrupted. This is something that's commonly said. The Bible has been perverted, and they refer to us as the people of the book. Now, when that title is not a rude title, it's not a denunciating title. It's actually a complimentary one. And but what Allah and the Quran teach directly contradict what the people of the Islamic faith teach today. The Quran and Allah, people like to say it's corrupted. Well, the Quran and Allah confirm over and over that the scriptures are good. Quran chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. He writes that he inspired the Torah and the Gospels as a guidance for mankind. A lot of Muslims know about the inspiration of the Bible, but not a lot of them know about the Quran also speaks on the ongoing preservation of the Bible. Quran chapter number 7, verse 157. Allah goes on to say that all of his revelations, the Bible, or the Quran, the Gospels, the Torah, all of these that are written in a book should not be changed. Quran chapter 6, verses 114 and 115, and Quran chapter 18, verses 27, which means that the Bible has not been changed or it has not been corrupted because this is a revelation from Allah. And he says, no, these words, my words, so the Torah, the Gospel, the Quran, all of these should not be changed or corrupted, which means that the Bible has not been corrupted. The Quran is not for non-Arabic people or people of English culture or language. A crazy case in Quran chapter 5, verse 43 is that some Jews come to Muhammad to settle a dispute. And Allah, talking to Muhammad, says, why are these Jews coming to you when they have the Torah? They have the revelation. Why in the world are they coming to you for guidance when I've already given them the Torah, their revelation? And he goes on to say that, Muhammad, the reason you are here is because the Arabs do not have a book in their own language. The Jews, all these other people have their revelation in their own language. In Quran chapter 5, verse 47, Muhammad says for the people of the gospel to judge by the revelation that they were given. So the Jewish people and all these people, you have your revelation, so judge by the gospel, judge by the Torah, the book that you were given. And the next verse goes on to say, the Muslims are to judge by the Quran. But all the Muslims today, they try to make it as in everybody should be reading the Quran. Everybody should get rid of the Bible. The Bible's been corrupted. The Bible's been perverted. Well, The Bible was given as a revelation for the English people, and the Quran was for the Arabic people to have it in their own language. And so a lot of people try to push it off. No, you need to read the Quran. Get rid of the Bible. Well, that's not what Allah says. You have your revelation. They have yours. In the Quran, chapter 5, verse 68, it says that Christians and Jews do not have ground to stand on without the Torah or the gospel. It's very interesting to say that if the Bible has been corrupted when Allah has said this. Something very interesting, in Surah 10, verse 94, Muhammad was having doubts about his religion. And so he goes to Allah, and Allah tells him, if you are having doubts about your religion, go to the people of the book and make sure that your revelations line up with theirs. So the question is, if the Bible is a good revelation, and we see that it is from Allah, and He has said it, and the Quran has said it over and over, it's just people like to avoid things that they just think are uncomfortable for them. But the Quran is apparently also a good revelation. God should not contradict Himself. And that's what we find in the Quran, and that's what we find in the Bible. They both can't be right. And like I had said before, truth is not relative. There's an absolute truth. There's one way for everybody to get to heaven, and both the Bible and the Quran can't be right. So what I want to go on to talk about now is some errors that are in the Quran. Now, there's a man who did a video that there was 43 errors in the Quran. I'm only going to list 14, and then I'm going to go on to some questions that I have for you, and then that's how I'm going to end this all today. So 14 errors that I have found in the Quran. Number 1, animals produce milk in their stomach between blood and feces. Quran chapter 16, verse 66. Number 2, stars are missiles used to throw at devils trying to sneak into heaven. Quran chapter 67, verse 5. Number 3, the moon was split in two. Quran chapter 54, verse number 1. There has been zero evidence for that. Number 4, you cannot pass the heavens without Allah's authority. Quran chapter 55, verse 33, which non-believers did whenever they went to the moon. Number 5, sun has a resting place where it stops. Quran chapter 36, verse 38. Found also setting in a muddy puddle. Quran chapter 18, verse 86, which the sun does not have a resting place where it goes and it just sits. That's scientifically inaccurate. Number 6, the sky can fall on us. Chapter 22, verse 65. Number 7, semen comes from between the backbone and the ribs, which this is shown to be proved scientifically inaccurate. They says that in the Quran, chapter 8, verse 67. Milk, number 8, from cow is pure and drinkable for everyone. Quran chapter 16, verse 66, which we see that there are people that are lactose intolerant. There's people, not everybody can drink after milk. I'm one of those people. Chocolate milk is my favorite drink on the planet, but I have to make a decision that I have to suffer through this drink if I'm going to drink it. So it's not pure and it's not drinkable for everyone. Number 9, birds cannot fly. Quran 1679, and boats cannot float. Quran 1766 without Allah, which means they're not self-sufficient. The only reason that they can fly is because of Allah allowing them to fly. Number 10, a cow's heart was used to bring a dead man back to life. Quran chapter 2, verses 71 and 73. Verse number 11, dead birds can fly. Quran chapter number 2, verses 260. There's an account where Abraham killed these flock of birds, and he threw them all down, and then he calls them back, and those dead birds come alive again and fly back to him. Just some weird stuff. Number 12, the moon is a light in and of itself. When we know that the moon is a reflection of a light, not a light in and of itself. Quran chapter 71, verse 16. Number 13, the earth is the shape of a carpet. Quran 71, 16. Number 14, and final, 7 men and their animals slept for 309 years in a cave and then woke up. Quran chapter 18, verses 9 through 26, and Quran chapter 18, verses 12 through 26. So as you see here, I just listed some weird and some scientifically inaccurate things that are written in the Quran that has me question. If you look up a video, and I would highly encourage you to look up a couple of videos, The Islamic Dilemma by David Wood. Another video, there's a guy who goes through 43 errors that he found in there. I would highly encourage you to look up these things. Don't just take it for word. Don't come in as a Christian saying, "Oh, I'm just going to believe these things." Don't come in as a Muslim person saying everything he's saying is just false. He's trying to defer the evidence. Well, actually look through it and how accurate the Quran actually is, and look through the history of some of these things. And some questions that I have for you in ending. And I just kind of wanted to reveal some evidence today. Some questions for the people of Islam, some Muslim people. Number one, how do you explain Muhammad's 3 disqualifications from prophethood? Changing verses, Quran chapter 16, verse 101. No fulfilled prophecies, Quran chapter 7, verse 203. We never have any evidence of Muhammad ever fulfilling any prophecies or any of them ever coming to pass that he's made. So that's 2 out of the qualifications right there. And then number 3, friendship with demons. Quran chapter 72, verses 1 through 15, and Quran chapter 46, verses 29 through 31. Number 2, the question I have for you. Do you believe it is right for Muslims to kill Christians? Because it says to do so in Quran chapter number 9, verses 29 and 30. People that don't believe like you do, or people that have left the faith. And that's another thing. If you plan on joining the Islamic faith, you don't ever want to leave, because if you do leave, they say your life's supposed to end if you do leave. Do you believe it's right for Muslims to kill? And you say, no, that's we're not supposed to be violent. Well, you have to avoid all of the Islamic historical accounts and all these things that happen of people being beat, wives being beat, and people being killed, and all these things. You have to avoid all of that history to go on and believe what you're believing right now. Number 3 question, what manuscript evidence exists to support Quran's claim that Jesus was not crucified? Because this is a very, very big claim that Jesus was not crucified, but there is zero proof for why the Quran and Muhammad and all these people believe this, when in fact we have all this historical records that say Jesus Christ did die on a cross. Number 4, how do you know that you as a Muslim will make it into the afterlife when Allah predestines many men to hell? Quran chapter 7, verse 178. And even Muhammad was not even sure if Allah would allow him into heaven. He didn't know what was going to happen after death. Hadith, volume 5, number 66. So how do you know, as an Islamic person, as a Muslim, that you're even going to make it in the afterlife, and you're going to be able to? There ain't no telling what could happen with you. I would like to know certainty. I know in the Bible it says that you may know that you have eternal life. One thing we trust with Jesus Christ and believing him, that we never have to doubt our salvation, and we are eternally secure, eternally steadfast, and we get to live forever with him. Last question I have for you. Do you approve of the Quran commanding fighting to spread Islam when there's over 61 references that you're supposed to do so? So that's the questions that I have for you today. I have one last question. I forgot it was on the back page. It was hiding from me, and this is the last thing, and I'm going to end it today. Why do you believe the Quran is God's word when there is no fulfilled prophecies, no archaeological evidence, and very, very little historical evidence for Muhammad? So what I wanted to do today is just give you something to think about. I'm not coming on here to be negative. I'm not coming on here to be critical. I'm not coming on here to say you're wrong and I'm right or just anything like that. I just wanted to give you some facts. I wanted to give you some truth, some things to think about, because like I said before, eternity is forever. And this is something to think about. This is something to dwell on, to think about these questions. I have a whole book that goes over 80 questions to ask Muslims just because of some weird things that are found in the Quran about your faith. And I just didn't have time to go into all those today. But there's just so many things, just inconsistencies that I've found in my faith, and I genuinely want you to come to the truth. I want to come to the truth. That's why I'm doing all these studies, and I'm not doing it with a biased action towards anything. This is just the truth that's there, and I just wanted to share that with you. So this is going to be for Christians when you're talking to your Muslim friends, or this can be for Muslims coming in here, and I pray that you'd please come to the faith, come to Jesus Christ. He's the common denominator in all these religions. Why not just come to Jesus and him alone? Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm going to continue my Why I'm Not series. I'm going to talk about why I'm not a Catholic, why I'm not a Pentecostal, just all these other things that I'm going to delve into. But I hope this was a help to you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll look forward to talking to you here again soon.